The old man collapsed in the middle of the hotel lobby, and while everyone else stood frozen, a tired single father dropped to his knees and fought to keep him alive. Minutes later, that same father would be accused of causing the chaos, escorted out of the building, and fired from the only job keeping food on his daughter's table. But nobody knew that the man he had saved was the father of one of the city's most powerful CEOs, and nobody knew that a mysterious millionaire had witnessed everything. Daniel Carter had learned not to expect life to be fair. At 36, he was raising his 8-year-old daughter, Emma, alone after losing his wife several years earlier. He worked as a hotel maintenance supervisor, fixing broken elevators, leaking pipes, damaged doors, and anything else guests never noticed until it stopped working. The salary was modest, but Daniel treated his job like a promise. Every morning, before leaving for work, he packed Emma's lunch, checked her homework, kissed her forehead, and reminded her that difficult days did not mean they had to become bitter people. That morning, Emma had hugged him a little longer than usual because she knew her father was worried about money. Their rent was due in 3 days, Daniel's car needed repairs, and Emma had been quietly hiding a letter from school because she was afraid to tell him that she needed new shoes. Daniel noticed the worn soles when she walked away, but he said nothing. Instead, he promised himself that somehow, he would fix everything. By noon, the luxury hotel was crowded with businessmen preparing for an important corporate event. Daniel was repairing a malfunctioning service elevator when he noticed an elderly man standing near the main lobby. The man was elegantly dressed but looked unusually pale. Daniel recognized him from photographs around the city. He was Richard Hayes, the retired founder of Hayes International and father of Victoria Hayes, the hotel's powerful CEO. Then Richard suddenly grabbed his chest and collapsed. People screamed. Several employees rushed backward, afraid to touch him. One manager shouted for security while another demanded someone call an ambulance. Daniel did not wait. He dropped his tools, ran across the lobby, checked Richard's breathing, and immediately began first aid. He remembered the emergency training he had taken years earlier. His hands shook, but he stayed focused. He kept Richard's airway clear, monitored his breathing, and refused to move away until the paramedics arrived. For several terrifying minutes, Daniel fought to keep a stranger alive while dozens of people watched. When the ambulance finally arrived, Richard was still breathing. If you believe kindness should never depend on someone's wealth, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to SoulTales. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change a life in ways we never expect. Daniel thought he had done the right thing. He thought someone might at least thank him. Instead, everything changed within an hour. The hotel's general manager called Daniel into a private office. Victoria Hayes had arrived after hearing about her father's collapse, and she was furious. Richard had been brought to the hospital, and the doctors were running tests. Someone had told Victoria that Daniel had been arguing with her father shortly before the incident. That statement was completely false, but the hotel's security footage had mysteriously disappeared from the lobby system. The manager accused Daniel of causing unnecessary confusion and violating security procedures. Daniel tried to explain that he had only stepped forward because Richard had collapsed, but nobody wanted to listen. Worse, one employee claimed Daniel had pushed through the crowd aggressively before Richard fell. Daniel looked around the office, stunned. He had spent years working for the hotel. He had never stolen anything, never mistreated a guest, and never caused trouble. Yet within minutes, his supervisor handed him a termination notice. Daniel's first thought was not about himself. It was about Emma. He walked home that evening carrying the small cardboard box containing his personal belongings. His shoulders felt heavier than they ever had before. When Emma opened the door and saw the box, she immediately understood something was wrong. Daniel forced a smile and told her they would figure things out. That night, after Emma fell asleep, he sat alone at the kitchen table and stared at the termination letter until his eyes filled with tears. He had saved a man's life that morning. And by sunset, he had lost his job. The next several days were brutal. Daniel applied everywhere, but his sudden termination made employers suspicious. His savings disappeared quickly. He started skipping meals so Emma could eat properly. He sold his old watch, then his television, and finally considered selling his car. Every night, he told Emma that things would get better. Every night, after she fell asleep, he wondered whether he was lying. Meanwhile, Richard Hayes survived. Doctors discovered that his condition had been extremely serious. Had Daniel not acted immediately, Richard might not have made it to the hospital alive. Victoria visited her father every day. But Richard kept asking the same question. He wanted to know who had saved him. Victoria eventually discovered Daniel's name. She ordered the hotel to retrieve the security footage from the lobby, but she was told the recording had been corrupted. That answer bothered her. Then something unexpected happened. A wealthy businessman named Michael Grant contacted Victoria. Michael was a private investor and one of the richest men in the city. He rarely appeared publicly, and almost nobody knew much about his personal life. But Michael had been staying at the hotel that morning. He had been sitting in a quiet corner of the lobby when Richard collapsed. And unlike everyone else, Michael had recorded what happened. He had been filming a short video for a private business meeting when Richard suddenly fell in the background. His phone had captured the entire incident. Michael watched the recording again. There was no argument. There was no push. There was no aggressive behavior. There was only Daniel running toward an unconscious elderly man while everyone else froze. Michael immediately sent the video to Victoria. When she watched it, her face changed. She saw Daniel kneeling beside her father, desperately trying to keep him alive. She saw him shouting for someone to call an ambulance. She saw employees stepping away while Daniel stayed. Then she saw what happened afterward. She saw Daniel being escorted away. She saw him carrying the box containing his belongings. And she realized her father's rescuer had been punished for saving him. Victoria confronted the hotel manager. Under pressure, the truth finally came out. The employee who had accused Daniel had been afraid of losing his own position after admitting that he had ignored Richard's medical distress. He had altered his story to protect himself. The manager had accepted the accusation because he wanted the incident to disappear before it damaged the hotel's reputation. But Michael had one more discovery. He had investigated Daniel. He learned that Daniel had been raising his daughter alone, that he had never received a serious disciplinary complaint, and that after losing his job, he had been struggling to pay for basic necessities. Michael could have simply written Daniel a check. Instead, he decided to meet him. Daniel was standing outside Emma's school one rainy afternoon when a black luxury car stopped beside him. Michael stepped out and introduced himself. Daniel immediately became uncomfortable. He had no idea why a millionaire would want to speak with him. Michael told him the truth. He had seen everything. He had proof. And he wanted Daniel to know that his kindness had not gone unnoticed. Daniel tried to hold back his emotions, but when Michael told him that the video proved he had saved Richard's life, the years of exhaustion finally broke through. Daniel lowered his head and cried quietly. Not because he wanted money. Not because he wanted revenge. He cried because, for the first time in days, someone had believed him. Victoria later apologized to Daniel personally. She admitted that her fear for her father had caused her to judge the wrong person. She offered him his job back, but Daniel politely declined. He no longer wanted to work somewhere that had been willing to destroy his reputation without hearing the truth. Instead, Michael offered Daniel something completely different. He had recently been looking for someone trustworthy to manage a new property maintenance company. He offered Daniel a management position with better pay, health benefits, and a flexible schedule that would allow him to spend more time with Emma. Daniel accepted. Months later, the company was thriving. Daniel still remembered what it felt like to sit at a kitchen table wondering how he would feed his daughter. So whenever one of his employees struggled, he treated them differently. He listened before judging. He helped when he could. He remembered that people often carried battles nobody else could see. Richard eventually recovered completely. One afternoon, he visited Daniel's new office with Victoria. Richard shook Daniel's hand and thanked him, but Daniel simply smiled and told him that he had only done what anyone should have done. Richard looked at Emma, who was standing beside her father, and smiled. He told her that her father had taught him something important. Sometimes the richest person in a room is not the one wearing the most expensive suit. Sometimes it is the person who gives everything they have to help someone else. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes good people deserve a second chance, and subscribe to SoulTales. Your support helps us continue sharing stories about kindness, courage, and the unexpected ways one good decision can change a life. And before we reach the ending, comment, kindness always wins, if you believe doing the right thing is worth it even when nobody is watching. Daniel never became famous for saving Richard Hayes. He never asked for recognition, and he never forgot how quickly the world had turned against him. But he also learned something more powerful than revenge. Truth may sometimes arrive late. Justice may sometimes take longer than we want. But kindness has a way of leaving footprints that even lies cannot erase. And on the hardest days, when Daniel looked at Emma and remembered how close they had come to losing everything, he knew one thing for certain. He had not saved Richard because he knew he was a millionaire's father. He saved him because he was a human being in need. And in the end, that simple act of kindness saved Daniel's life too.